Peace, everyone. This is Chief Yuya, and we were supposed to be on Blog Talk this evening live, but there was some difficulties over there, as usual. I mean, I don't even want to. It's like an old story now, right? Sounds like a broken record. Blog Talk issues, but it only means that our time there is dwindling, and like I said, we'll be transitioning over to the YouTube format, which would allow us to do a little bit more, because we can include video into things. So I guess you could say a more engaging medium coming over to YouTube. So at this point, I guess the spiritual community has now started to has packed its bags and is now on a pilgrimage over to the other space. So the spirits are saying, well, we're not supporting the Blog Talk thing anymore. So that's why we're having all of these different issues. So I wanted to do a live segment this evening, but unfortunately I am unable to because of the tech issues. So here we are. But tonight's segment was on is on innovative thinking. And when I was looking through the archives, I realized that I did a show on innovation because it's an important theme to me. So, I talk about it often, even in some of my personal conversations. So, I can understand me lapping it like that. But there's a different aspect of innovation that I wanted to speak on today. And I think it's something that, even though this is Thunderground Thursdays and we're dealing with activism, I think this aspect of innovation is it's crucial for a lot of people who are involved in spiritual work and those who have kind of grown a little frustrated with the work, or maybe even on some levels bored. If you're someone who's easily bored and you don't have to feel guilty about that just because it's spiritual work or it's ancestral work or whatever. If you're bored, you're bored, but the thing is, I know a lot of times when we're trying to knock this work out and perform certain acts and things like that. Like I said, there's a couple of things that we have to come to realization of. One, you have to kind of gauge your determination. If you really, really want it. A lot of people don't want it as bad as they say they do, but if you really, really want it, you have to gauge, okay, how hard am I going to work for this? That's kind of like the first thing. And like I said before, when it comes to magical work, some people don't have the level of magic in them that they think is possible because they're looking at a lot of media. And in media, you always have these stories of the unlikely hero. The person who finds out that they're generations old warlock or they have a special magic wand that their grandmother left under their pillow that they didn't know about. So a lot of times people have these kind of fantasy thoughts in terms of doing spiritual work, and they kind of bind themselves up because they think, okay, well, everyone should be able to go out and do the same things. And then when they're unable to reach those spaces, they get frustrated. And this is when you could do two things. One, you got to make an assessment of whether I'm supposed to be able to manifest magic, because magic and spirituality are two different things. You being able to do spells and things like that and readings at a certain level, that's not for everybody. Everyone does not have that in them. But to be able to educate yourself on your spirit nature in the spirit world, that's open and available to anyone and everyone. That should be a part of your basic training in life. I've often said that public school education should look more like a Masonic order. That's, the lessons that individuals learn and the Masonic lodges. If you think about it, that's really what people should be learning in school. That's what high school should look like, where you're learning occultism and astronomy and physics, and you're learning the tools to build yourself as a better person and to build better communities, and you're able to kind of see beneath the surface of things and all these things that you would learn in the Masonic lodge. These are the things that I say public school should be, but it's just training, of course. But in any event, so we're speaking about innovation, and what I wanted to speak about today is, or this evening, I should say, are limitations. And more specifically, when we're speaking about limitations, I wanted to talk about just where the points and the places that we hit sometimes when we're trying to do a certain work and then we feel like we've reached our limit of capability in that particular work, right? So let's say we're trying to manifest money spiritually and we're doing certain wealth rituals, and then we find that the most that we're ever able to manifest is maybe $1,000 or $1,500, and we can only do it once a month. We can't seem to manifest $1,000 every day or $1,000 every 7 days, so we feel like we've reached our limit, and we say, well, this is what I'm capable of. And sometimes because of that, a certain amount of frustration sets in, because we say, well, man, I didn't want this to be my limit. I was hoping that my limit would be a little higher than this. It's kind of like the person who is a one-hit wonder. They come out with a tune and it makes it big, and they think that their celebrity is going to last forever, of course. And if you're at a certain age, you feel like you're going to live forever. But they find that within 2 years, no one even knows their name anymore. And they're distraught. They say, man, I thought this was going to last longer than this. Not realizing that you've reached not your particular limitation, but what you've reached is your plateau. And if you could just replace the idea, because a lot of times when I'm doing these segments, I'm always telling you, replace this word with that word, replace that word with that word. What you don't realize is that's actually the magic. Because what is it? It's spells. We're doing magic spells. So when you learn to use certain words of power, then you program the subconscious in a certain direction that you wouldn't have normally, right? And don't confuse normally with naturally. So we'll say, okay, we could take out the idea of a limit and we'll say plateau. Plateaus are meant to be what? They're meant to be broken through, right? A limitation is like a prison. So we say, no, I've reached a new plateau. Okay, so things have leveled out and now I have to find a new mountain to climb, right? So that's when we can start to ascend beyond what we feel or perceive to be our current point or our current limit of achievement, right? So this goes for magic. This goes for just personal work. This goes for working out. You hit that plateau. Sometimes you'll have a spurt in certain things that you'll be doing, even artistically. Then things will level off and you don't know where to move from there. So that's what we're talking about in this particular segment as it relates to innovation. We're going to talk, and it's not going to be a long segment because I was hoping to do an hour, like I said, on the other guys, but they did me kind of dirty over there. What was happening is I couldn't call in. I was trying to call in to get the show started and the phone just kept ringing. And then I had somebody else call. I said, maybe it's something it doesn't like my phone number. So I have a couple of phones. So I tried a different phone, nothing. So I asked somebody else in a totally different time zone to call in, still nothing, just ringing and ringing, so it is what it is, whatever, no big deal. Even if the technology breaks down, it doesn't mean that, our brains break down. Okay. So we still have a message to share, so let's talk about achievement for a moment. But actually, before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. And after this break, we're going to come back with more on innovative thinking.
The Alpha Omega Store is a family-owned and operated premier online store serving as your one-stop shop for all of your spiritual and self-development needs. At the Alpha Omega Store, we offer you hard-to-find spiritual and ritual supplies, books, DVDs, personal development services, monthly specials, international shipping, and more. From spiritual supplies to business products and services, our mission is to provide you with the tools that will put you on your road to success. Purchase your quality products and services today at alphaomegastore.com. Bring yourself to a place of spiritual and holistic balance with exclusive life design services at osirislife.com. At Osiris Life, we offer our members exclusive one-on-one instruction, including 3 monthly service level options to choose from, monthly spiritual consultations, monthly podcasts and videos, custom tailored development plans, spiritual work done on your behalf, life coaching and support, and working solutions with real results. Awaken to your personal greatness and purchase your membership package today at osirislife.com. And now, back to our segment.
All right, here we are again, of course, with more Thunderground Thursday. And speaking, I am Chief Yuya, or Yuya, right? And we're speaking about innovative thinking in this segment. And again, I want to say for all those who were expecting a live show this evening, well, I guess you really weren't expecting one because I was going to spring a live show on you. So you wouldn't have known regardless. So, but at least you were expecting to tune in, at the appropriate time. But hey, things happen. And that's really what the innovation is about. Someone was saying to me, they were like, oh man, you're kind of, sharing your shows and stuff on other mediums already. Why don't you really work the Blog Talk thing? Because people seem to like your shows a lot and you can build up a strong following there. And I said, yeah, I could, if I stayed at it, and did the usual Blog Talk stuff and did more live shows and stuff like that and brought in more hosts. But I'm not really interested anymore. Not to say that I couldn't do more on that via that medium, but it's kind of boring me now. Not speaking to you all, but the medium itself is kind of boring me. And it's like, oh, okay, so we talk. I don't see you, you don't see me. It's minimal interaction except for on Sundays, and even the way you're probably tuning in, where you're calling in and then you're doing something else, but you got your Bluetooth headset in. I'm like, I want to shake it up now. I want people to tune in differently. I want to tune into them differently. I'm ready for something else because I've reached what I feel to be a plateau here. Now the numbers are steady climbing. The shows are getting more and more popular. So could we technically say that's a plateau? As far as the shows, no, the shows are still on the upward climb. But for me personally, I feel it's a plateau because my excitement level for what Blog Talk can be has now leveled off. All right. Not a bad thing. Okay. So I'm not saying I'm disenchanted or anything, but it's just leveled off. So, I'm able to see it as such because I'm not viewing it as a limit. I'm viewing it as a plateau. So now I'm looking, my personal achievement said, okay, I wanted to do this. It originally just started off as a little podcast. No, not even that. It originally started off as just MP3 recordings that I was sending people internationally because I was doing local classes and they wanted to be a part of it, but of course they couldn't. So I said, tell you what, I'll email you, but the class was like 4 or 5 hours. So I was like, man, these files are kind of big. And then I found out about podcasting. I had heard about it before, but it just didn't sound cool. The word itself, podcasting. Yeah, I'm all right. That's not something for me. And then I found, I said, oh, that's an easier way to distribute the information. People can subscribe and things like that. And then that turned into a Blog Talk show. Right. So all of that was climbing up a hill from just mailing out MP3 files to help people out. And then, all it was done for free. So they were really getting my class for free. And then going to the podcast and then going to the the Blog Talk, still going up the hill, still like, okay, cool. Different ways to connect with the people, different ways to give them the information. Then leveled off. You see? Didn't hit the limit, didn't hit the max. By far have not hit the max. But hit the plateau of what I want to do with this. Okay, so that's because you go through certain stages when you're learning something. And, I'm going to say this too. One of the things that sparked this segment is that I was speaking to someone recently and they asked me, they were saying, they asked me what they were good at. This is one of my students. So they were asking me, spiritually, what do you think my specialty is? And I said, you don't have a specialty yet because you're not good enough at anything to have a specialty. You have to go through certain base rudiments first to kind of get a sense of, okay, once I have an overall sense, I can do several different things, which are the base requirements for the work that I'm doing. Then now I can say, well, this particular area I took a liking to, or came quick, came easy, or I'm just good at this particular piece. So I said when you're starting off, a lot of times, one of the reasons why you get frustrated is because you've never covered the basics. You're skipping the steps. And, when you're striving towards learning something or doing something that may be a new activity for you, especially if we're talking about spiritual work, of course, because, again, a lot of the work that we talk about is the spiritual work. There's certain stages that sometimes we're unaware of that cause us some frustration, by the time we become aware of them, because we're a little behind the curve a little bit, so like when you're first coming to a space where you're trying to learn something, and please excuse the rustling if you may hear it in the background. I'm just trying to clear my space a little bit while I'm talking. Your first stage is your knowing stage, or your knowledge acquisition, right? So you got to you're learning about exactly what it is that you're attempting to do. So again, if you're doing spiritual work, you're kind of taking in the knowledge of what it is that you want to work on. And during that time, you're learning how to do things more efficiently. You're learning how to do more effective rituals. I just did a show recently on effective rituals, right? But you're learning the most effective ways to do things, the most efficient ways to do things, and you're learning really where you're going to make your most mistakes. Okay? Because you're trying to strategize on how you can actually achieve the accomplishment that you want to achieve. So, of course, you're going to learn, well, this method works for me, that method works for me, so forth and so on. Then after that, you kind of come into a space where you're not messing up as much, and you begin to infuse the particular activity into your thinking matrix. So, like, let's say if somebody's like, okay, you're learning construction, right? Your first phase, well, I got to learn how to hold this hammer. I have to learn how to hit a nail straight. I have to learn what kind of nails to use depending on what kind of material that I'm putting the nail into. I might learn little tips and tricks, like in order, if you're going through a thinner piece of wood and you got a piece of nail, you don't want the wood to crack. What you do is you put some wax around the nail first, or you put a candle on top of the hole where you got to hit, and then hammer the nail through the actual wax. That keeps the wood from splitting. It's an old tip I learned years ago working on doing some work, but so little things like that. And that's that phase. And then the second phase of your learning is you start to associate those things with something that you're already comfortable and more familiar with. So you may say, yeah, I'm using the hammer, and it's just like I'm John Henry, laying down railroad lines across the country. Or you may feel the movements of using the hammer simulate something else, maybe a certain workout move that you do, or you get a certain rhythm. And in that space, and that kind of coming out of that more cognitive learning space, and you're coming more into that wisdom or experiential space, you're now associating your activity with something that you're familiar with. And you find that you're not messing up as much anymore at that place. And then after that, you come into a space where, like I always say, you kind of find your groove. And finding your groove is like, you're doing things by second nature. Okay, so somebody says, hey man, could you nail those 2x4s, make a square frame real quick? You're not thinking about how to nail and hammer. Your mind is not there. Your mind is on other things, because you can do that particular activity automatically. So now you've acquired the mechanics of the actual activity. Now, I will tell you all, this is the phase that most of you don't make it to, and you don't realize it. Most of you try to jump to this phase. You skip the first two ones, and you try to jump to this one. Or you skip the second phase. Many of you get a little bit of the first phase, which is more cognitive, more knowledge-based, more cerebral. And then you jump right to, I should be able to do this automatically. Nothing works like that. Your brain doesn't even work like that. But you can't learn that way. You see? So then you get frustrated, because it's like, you feel a little shaky, or maybe you're doing something, but inside you have this little minor thorn where you feel like something's missing. I'm not somehow I'm not doing something correctly. And then what happens usually is then you hit a brick wall. You hit that wall where you feel like you just can't push through it. Or like I said, you've reached what you consider to be your limit, and you feel like you should be able to do more, but somehow you're unable to break past the point that you're currently at. Okay. Now this is common. This is so doggone common, especially in spiritual work, because people don't go through the training properly. Even the training that I put up, people don't go through it properly. It's very rare that any person who calls themselves my students goes through ANU spiritual training the right way. This is the advantage, really, like when I do retreats or personal classes or lectures and workshops. I can look at you in your face, and when you're nodding, say, "Oh yeah, I got it. I can tell you, no, you don't have it." Sometimes you hear it on the shows on Chief Speaks. I'll give somebody some guidance, and they'll try to repeat it back to me, and they'll say something completely different than what I said. Oh, so you basically saying blah, 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 blah. They're so quick to want to jump from stage 1, the knowledge acquisition, to stage 3, where it's become second nature. You see, that's when you know you're dealing with an extremely egotistical person, because what you're dealing with is a person who's terrified of failure. So what they do is immediately when you start to teach them something, they associate everything that you're teaching them with something that they already know, because they don't want to step out into a space where they might actually fail. Now, let me tell you the secret, because I'm going to jump around a little bit. That is actually the secret to breaking through your personal plateaus. You have to actually embrace and hug and marry yourself to your failure, as opposed to what many people do. It reminds me of, as I'm talking, it's almost like, it's interesting. When I do a lot of these segments, because I speak to so many different people in terms of like the work that I do, a lot of times when I do these segments, I have like 30 or 40 people flashing through my head, like just different images of different people who do these things. So, because everything that I'm talking to you about, it's integrative. These are things that I've experienced, maybe myself, or I've counseled people through. So that's why it's easy a lot of times, for me to come up with show topics, because there's so much, and I'm doing sessions with people every day, just about. And, cause this strong has been my strong back after my beautiful hiatus. Oh goodness. It was so nice to, be able to catch up on some things and fulfill some promises and things like that. That was awesome. So yeah, that month I took off of doing a consultation, because like I said, it does drain you. After a while, it does really wear you out dealing with people, especially if they feel like you're an individual who has answers, then they really like to fight you. And that's a part of people not being able to move beyond their plateaus too. Because what people do a lot of times, like let's say if you're a filmmaker, right? A person may make a film and they'll say, okay, now I'm going to share this with somebody so I can get some feedback on it, right? But what they really are looking for is someone to give them positive affirmations on what it is that they just did. I get this often. People will share things with me and they say, what do you think? Like I remember once I was at the International Arts Festival with a sister I was dealing with. She was selling some oils, and she had made up these like, personal blends. They were really nice, and her one of her friends was there helping her at her table, I guess you could say. So I had just swung by, I said, yeah, I'm gonna stop by, say what's up to you, whatever. So I came by, and her friend said, oh, this is a oil that she made. And she said, check it out. So I smelt it, and she was like, what do you think? And I said, it's all right. And she said, whoa. She was like, so I guess basically nothing she does is right. Now, this was actually the first day I ever met this woman. I didn't know her from a hill of beans. I had heard her name a couple of times, but I didn't know who she was. But she was so afraid. Now, this was not the woman I was dating. This was the woman I was with knew, like, yeah, he's gonna answer honestly. Yeah, it's all right. It wasn't all that great. I'm gonna tell you honestly because I care about you, and I want you to do the best actual product that you could do. I'm smelling this, and I'm like, this isn't your plateau. Nah, you could do better than that. You slap this together. Which she admitted later. She was like, yeah, I know. I should have worked on it longer, but I waited till the last minute. I wonder if you guys can hear that rain in the background. Some rain falling on my window pane. Her friend, though, even though she hadn't made the oil, vicariously, she felt failure. And that failure terrified her to the point that she now had to put me in a certain box. That, of course, I'm just like looking at her like giggling, like, no, you don't even know who I am. Like, you're not going to bait me into something stupid like that. Like really, you just revealed your stupidity, you know? So I was just like, yeah, I hear you. Anyway, moving on to the next thing, you know, so, one of the issues a lot of times with people who hit certain plateaus and hit certain like kind of just dead spots or like I said earlier, who hit certain walls and that rain is coming down. Yuya is doing her thing tonight. All day really, it's been raining here. We had some thunder last night, but you know, Yuya is definitely in the space. You know, and I'm right now, I'm speaking to you all. I have my windows wide open, so that's why you're hearing all that noise. But we got a little mini monsoon going on outside right now, which is great. I love it. So, you know, obviously rain is good. It cleans, you know, all the spit and the urine off the streets. Because people do spit and urinate on the streets a lot. You know, get it off the streets. So anyway, yeah, the idea of breaking through is that a lot of times you have to, or breaking through that wall, like I was saying, is that one, you have to bring your work, like if you're a filmmaker, bring it to someone who's going to give you a critical feedback that's honest, who's not going to sugarcoat anything. You know, this was talked about on Masterminds Monday when they were talking about mentors, which was an excellent show. That was probably one of my favorite shows that they've done. They had a nice flow this last Monday. They did Claude Anderson. You know, it went straight to YouTube. For anybody who was looking for Masterminds Monday, like what happened to it? Mastermind Monday and Anu Safo. I know we said we would start in November, but November will be like the final day with everything will be up on YouTube. But we've already started with those segments. But yeah, they had a real nice flow going on Claude Anderson. But yeah, they talked about mentors. So one of the things that they had pointed out was that, yeah, true mentors, for one, is going to be pretty short with you and be pretty direct because they don't have time to sit here and play with you. And that's what a lot of people can't take. You know, you guys kind of know how I am at this point. I don't have time to play with you. My schedule is so packed that when I am sharing time to interpret your dream for free or give you any type of life advice or anything like that, I have to be very direct and to the point because I have a lot of things going on. And plus, I care about people too much to play like that. To say, well, you know, I mean, it's good. I could see some people and knowing good and well that it's not good enough. You know, we don't really have that luxury for people to play around like that. You know, and we don't have the luxury to beckon people to give us this false form of constructive criticism. Just so that our ego can continue to be stroked. You can't grow professionally that way. You can't grow at all that way. So one of the things that we have to do in order to break beyond those walls that we hit is we have to learn to have the discipline. It really is discipline to be able to accept criticism. Real criticism. It takes discipline. It takes discipline to discipline your emotions so that when someone says, the oil's all right, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know about oil, give me, and snatch it back. You got to have discipline to kind of sit back for a second and say, okay, instead of just you hurt my feelings. Like you tell me something like that, I don't care. I don't care if I hurt your feelings. I don't care if you cry. None of that stuff. If I'm being honest and I'm being loving and I'm being truthful, your reaction is your reaction. That has nothing to do with me. That's on you. I don't have to take your reaction on and then respond to your reaction. You know, and that's one of the spaces that we have to kind of learn to come into with our work. You know, all this rain and wind, something must have just fell down. I hear sirens. A pole must have just fell down, you know. So one of the thing is that you find with people who are able to move beyond those spaces, people who are innovative thinkers, they not only embrace their failures, but in order to move beyond a wall, they'll do the thing that they fail at the most. Okay, I know that sounds kind of weird, but what they'll do is they'll say, okay, let's say again, I'm making a film, and there's certain areas in my filmmaking or even in my magical work where I know, like, okay, let's say like the prayers. Whenever I'm doing affirmations, I'm doing them in a certain language, and that's the part that I feel like I kind of mess up on the most, right? But we kind of just become complacent. It's like, yeah, even though I messed up, Chief said that, you're not always going to say it perfectly. Don't worry about it. What you do is you go back to the basics. So like, let's say if you're saying your prayers in Zulu, you go back, you get yourself a book on basic Zulu, and you just start studying basic Zulu all over again from the beginning, you see, and then do your work, but do extra prayers, or do the prayers faster than what you normally would do, or do them without your list in front of you. Force yourself to memorize them. You see how you're shaking up the matrix of the actual work that you're doing. And then what you're going to find is that when you do that, you're going to reveal the reasons why you were making the mistakes that you were making. I'll give you another example, especially for those who, some do well with more kinesthetic images or kinesthetic examples. But I remember many years ago, training with someone. I had one of my old fighting instructors. We were fighting. This is when I was first getting started with coming more, because prior to that I was doing more boxing. I was wrestling. I was a wrestler for a while, collegiate style, and then I was boxing. But I was doing like more of what you would probably consider to be like an Asian style martial science system. And so, it's different because when you're boxing, for one, you got gloves on, so that changes up the game a little bit. You can't grab, you can hook someone with your forearm and stuff, but you can't grab it much. So your fingers don't have as much play in the fight, so we were training, we were sparring, and he kicked me or I should say, I'm blaming him. Look at that. He kicked me. No. I was holding my hand incorrectly, and I went to block a kick, and he jammed, and my finger got jammed by his approaching foot. Okay, and it was very painful. It swelled up, and it was swollen, and it was humongous, and the finger next to it also was swollen, and he was like, "Oh, don't even worry about that." He was like, you're when it heals, it's going to heal back stronger anyway, which is a good thing. Actually, no, he didn't say that. One of my football buddies had said that because he had showed it. He was like, yeah, throw that in some ice. And I was walking around like that for a little while and had to sit at home with the ice and everything because it was pretty bad. But I remember him saying that. He was like, yeah, when that comes back, it's going to be stronger than what it was before, and eventually, I mean, through my training, I pretty much probably jammed all of my fingers, so all of my fingers are now bionic, they're stronger than what they were before. But that kind of meant something to me, and he was like, yeah, in the beginning, and I found myself later when I had my own students teaching them the same lesson. And he said, yeah, in the beginning, you're going to jam your fingers and stuff like that because you don't know how to hold your hands, and I'm like, yeah, I know how to fight. Not only, and I'm kind of nice with my hands. I'm good in the ring, but I could handle myself outside of the ring as well. Never really had an issue, and I'm pretty good with my hands. So I'm like, He was like, yeah, when you're learning how to fight. I never forget when he said that, because I'm like, learning how to fight? I know how to fight, within. But also the fact that he would just say that like that after he knew I was kind of a brawler. I was big, I was strong. So I said, well, that's a deliberate statement. He's saying I don't know how to fight, even though I think I know how to fight, but obviously I'm probably fighting people who can't fight. But a part of knowing how to fight is being body conscious. And obviously I didn't have the body conscious that was necessary to really be a true fighter, to be a true warrior at that time. I had to develop that, over time, like, where are my feet right now? as my mouth closed, because if you're fighting with your mouth open, you're going to get your jaw broke. And a lot of people do that. They fight and they're yelling at the same time. That's instant. You're getting your jaw wired. When I'm punching, am I tucking my chin into my shoulder? For support. If it gets hit, my head gets hit, I'm not twisting and getting my neck broken around. So you start to become more conscious of not only your physical frame, but you find that when you're more conscious of like, how am I holding my hands? Are my hands right? When I throw this punch, am I overextending my elbow, which can throw my joint out, stuff like that. But what happens is you become more aware of your opponent's body. So where their hand is, where their foot is, and, without having to look in those different places, because you've become more consciously aware of yourself. So in that situation, where I had reached a certain plateau in terms of my previous training, I had to go back to some very basics, some very, underlying basics of just body consciousness, being more self-aware, and do some of the mistakes that I was able to reveal because now the gloves are off. So I'm not wearing boxing gloves and fighting gloves. So now I got a new thing to be concerned about. These fingers, which at the time I'm also a musician. This is how I'm getting my money. So can't mess up these fingers now. But it broke me down to another basic level, which now allowed me to break through the current plateau that I had. So even when I went back to the boxing, I was a better boxer. Because I had to go back to the basics again, which allowed me to cut through a certain wall. I had to become more conscious, and even the failures, which I'm going to call the stunted fingers, having something hit my finger and push it into the joint and it swell up, and that happening a couple of times. Those failures that I embraced made me stronger because it showed me my weak spots. You see, it showed me what I needed to work on. So it's the same thing when you're trying to work on something. Sometimes when you hit a wall, you want to go back down to basics and then pay attention to your form. It's just like a dancer. If you're dancing and everything and you hit a certain plateau in your dance art, what you want to do is go back to the rudiments, slow everything down, do easier steps, and then focus on your form. And you're going to find that you probably skipped some things in your movements towards becoming whatever you were and whatever level you were at. And when you come back and slow things down, you might find that, my form wasn't right all this time. And in tightening that up, you're going to find that, wow, now I'm learning new things. It's just like bodybuilding. Let's say you're able to lift a certain amount of weight, you hit a wall, you're like, I don't feel like doing it anymore, you get bored or whatever. What you do is you take a lot of the weight off, you lighten the weight up. You might even want to go to body weight exercise, but you lighten the weight up and you do more reps, but focus on perfect form. And you're going to find out something interesting about yourself. You see, you're going to learn new things. So in order to break through a lot of what you would maybe call limitations, your innovation thinking or innovative thinking should bring you to a place where you say, you know what? In this space now, I'm going to break myself back down to basics, and then I'm going to embrace my failures. Okay? Because by embracing the failure aspect and the things that are making me trip up, I'm now creating a new set of goals. I'm now creating a new appreciation for my technique. And even in the sense of wanting to get immediate feedback on what it is that I'm doing. Like when my instructor said, don't worry about it because you're learning how to fight. So, you're going to jam your fingers because you don't know where to put your hands yet. All of that statement I could have gotten emotional about. What do you mean I don't put my hands? What do you mean I'm just learning how to fight? What do you mean it's going to happen again? Instead, I just said, okay. And what was interesting was that someone who was completely outside, I used to wrestle with him, but at the time he was playing for the New York Giants. But when I was like, man, what do I do about this finger? I'm like, all your fingers are crooked. You always hurt. And he was like, yeah, he called it something. I forget the name of it. He was like, oh yeah, we get those all the time. It's called I can't even remember. But it was like a special football name for that type of injury. And he was like, yeah, just soaking in some cold water, then soaking in some real hot. Well, he had this whole little thing. I was like, nah, that's too much. I'm gonna just do the first one, cold water, because I'm in and out of the cold and the hot water. You can have me doing a number one on myself. So, but the thing was, going outside of my current environment of feedback, coming from, being around fighters and then going to someone who was a football player and saying, hey, what do? It gave me another perspective too. And he was one who was like, oh, when it heals, it's going to be way stronger than what it is right now. So you won't even have to really worry about too many jams and stuff like that going forward. So you got to embrace the hurt. You got to embrace the failure. You got to embrace the swollen fingers in order to get stronger at what you do. You see, and that translates into every single thing that you're doing. You have to embrace the parts of what you're doing that you're no good at. Instead of trying to do the wrong thing the right way all the time. Because people who do that, that's that egotistical stuff. They don't want to embrace, let me try to do the wrong things that I've been doing. Let me go over those steps and do some of those things over and over again so I can learn exactly what my positioning should be. There's a terrifying thing there when it comes to failure. Some people are so afraid of failure that they're willing to kind of plateau or we'll say limit themselves at a place where they're able to do an activity where it's like, okay, it's good enough, and for some activities that's fine, like you may make oatmeal for yourself in the dawning. You may not be interested in being a world-class oatmeal maker. And people come to you and say, oh, you got to taste this oatmeal I make. You may just want to just get the oats in your body and get on with your day. So there's certain things that we're just not interested in going through the burn for. But the things that we have to, like I said earlier, we have to be willing to do the wrong things in a right way. Because like when you go through your failure, right? Or when you're going through your process, one of the challenges that we do in order to keep ourselves from actually failing, we find a comfort zone. And we say, you know what? I'm going to establish a routine inside of this comfort zone. And if I do that, and subconsciously, we're protecting our ego from getting bruised up a little bit. But the bruised ego is the gift, or the jammed fingers are what you need in order to move beyond. You have to be able to take certain risks. And that's where the sickness comes, because we prefer to do things that are wrong but do them correctly, as opposed to doing things that are right but do them in a wrong way. You see, and what that basically means, what I'm saying to you, is that we'll do the wrong things correctly, and that's where we find our patterns. Like, well, no, this is what we've always done, this is what I'm gonna keep doing. But even though it's not really working for me, it's not effective. But if somebody says, no, learn to do the wrong things correctly, meaning take the things that you're failing at, the things that you're not strong at, and learn how to do that correctly. But it's going to mean that there's going to be a series of failures that you're going to have to allow yourself to go through. You have to allow yourself to fail. As opposed to, like I remember I used to look at like old shows. It was I think it was either Abbott and Costello, or it was the Three Stooges. I don't know. I think it was Abbott and Costello. I know a lot of you probably don't even know what the heck that is, but it's old show that used to come on Saturdays, Sundays, whatever. But I remember there was one episode, they were somewhere and Costello, Lou Costello was yelling into like this can or something, and every time he would yell, like he would hear his voice back, and then he was like, echo, and then he kept like, echo, 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 and I think back and I say, that's what most people want in life. This is why they hit these walls and they can't get past them, because what they really want is just a reverberation of what they're already thinking and what they already feel. So you say, this is nice oil, right? And I say, yeah, that's nice oil. And the next person say, yeah, it's nice oil. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice. That's what you really want. You don't want the true reverberation back that gives that aversion to what it is that you're already thinking, or that aversion to your desire for positive affirmations. Sometimes we can't affirm something positively because it's the wrong thing. You have to be willing to do the wrong thing correctly. That means going through your failure instead of doing instead of doing the right thing wrongly. I'm sorry. You have to be willing to do the right thing wrongly. Willing to fail. but saying, even if I fail, even if I'm not very good at it for right now, at least I'm going to do the right thing. Because what's going to happen? I can only get better. Yeah, I'm going to fall. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to be that great. The magic is not going to work. The ritual is not going to work, but I'm doing the right thing. And eventually I'm going to get there, as opposed to doing something that's ineffective and it's something that's wrong, but going through the steps of that perfectly. What's the use of that? There's no value in that. There's no value. See, that's the intellectual meandering that we get into a lot of times. You know, this is why certain times people will come to me and they'll talk to me about certain books of scripture and this and that, and I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in how deep you can be in something that's ineffective. That's not impressive to me. You know, show me your struggle in something that actually makes sense. I'm more impressed by that. That's one of the things that I enjoy listening to personally. I enjoy listening to demo recordings. I will listen to a demo recording quicker than I'll listen to a finished studio project. Because the demo, I like to hear the mistakes. I like to hear the little off notes. I like to hear somebody playing off rhythm and things like that. You know, I enjoy that more because I'm listening to your process. I'm listening to you trying to reach that plateau. As opposed to when it's perfect, it's like listening to Stevie Wonder. Like I remember one time I was listening to him in concert, and he was I think we were at Radio City Music Hall. I don't remember, it was years. I've seen him a bunch of times in concert, but people in the audience were shouting out for him to sing "My Cherie Amour." Like he just went off. He was like, I'm never going to sing that GD song again. He was like, don't ask me about the, I mean, you know, normally you hear Stevie and he's like, yeah, and for all the children, I want to just say, if we could just join it. You know, he's always got something positive to say. He went off. And he said, I've been singing that song since I was 20 years old. I'm not singing that song anymore. Because he's reached a plateau with it. I don't enjoy it. I've sung that song every which way that it could probably be sung. I'm ready to do something else. You see, regardless of how much you love it, regardless of how much you feel about it or how great you feel about it, I'm ready for something different. You see, so that aversion to taking a chance and stepping out and doing something different is how we come into a place where we now surround ourselves with our limitations, because we're afraid of the risk. We're afraid of taking a chance. We're afraid of doing the right thing wrong. I know it sounds weird, but just think, most of the stuff I say sounds weird. Come on, I'm a priest in an indigenous tradition, so everything pretty much sounds weird. But just think about that for a moment, and that's the innovative thinking that we need to push ourselves into. I mean, I could go for hours on this one because there's a lot on this particular subject. But, like I said, the main thing what you want to do is you want to move yourself away from reverberation machines, or reverb machines, as we call them in the business, or echo machines. And that's just people who are going to echo right back whatever it is that you are looking for. Oh, I just finished your script. What do you think? It's great. You want people who have no time to waste, and they're going to give you immediate, quick feedback. And you have to be able to be disciplined enough to take that immediate, quick feedback and then build from it. Okay? That's important. You have to be willing to move through your failures. You have to be willing to go back to the basics sometimes. Like, even for those of us as writers, man, might be working on a work and stuff like that, and like you hit a wall or a block. You know what you do? Pick up a book on literary composition, a basic book, a literary composition for dummies. Go back to the basics. You'll be surprised, and you'll see little things in there. When you should use certain words and what type of form of writing, should you use this level of pronoun or that type of adverb, things like that, and then go back to your writing, and you're going to see it from a totally different eye. A lot of times you have to go back to the basics because some of those basics you skipped over. Because again, your ego creates patterns where things that you're not as good at, you'll move past it because you're afraid of the failure. And then you'll go to step 3, like I said, which is the more automatic phase. Think about how many of you now have your driver's license. You don't know how to drive. But driving has become such second nature. You don't think about it anymore. I mean, but when you first were learning how to drive, you had one hand at 10 o'clock, the other hand at 3 o'clock, and your seatbelt on, you had your mirrors set up properly. Now you just jump in the car. If you hit something, you hit something. That's what insurance is for. But if you wanted to become a much better driver, you was bored with driving, I bet you if you went back to the basics, you would find a totally different experience, and you would see all the areas that you're not that tight in. That's one of the things that we do even musically. I tell people if they're working on a certain piece and the piece isn't working for them, something is wrong, something doesn't sound right, I tell them play it in double time. If you play it in double time, you'll see just how strong or weak you really are with it. I used to train with a guy who worked, he practiced Tai Chi, and he was pretty good at his art. But everything was done very slow. It was all kata form. And I said, yeah, man, we got to fight though. Cause we need to expose the weaknesses in your system. He's like, there are no weaknesses in Tai Chi. And now there is weaknesses in every single system. So, we would fight and I would speed up the pace of the fight. I'm coming at him now. Hands around his neck, driving him, pushing him back, doing dirty stuff, reaching for his eyes and stuff like that, and forcing him to see the weaknesses by speeding things up, forcing him to failure. And it made him better at his art, even when he went back to slow it down again. Okay. So your innovative thinking in this form of busting through your plateaus is one, replacing the word with limitations or limits with plateaus, understanding that you always have to reach towards a new plateau, being willing to do the right things wrong and stop being stuck in a cycle of doing the wrong things right, moving yourself outside of the reverberation echo chamber mindset where your constructive feedback and positive affirmations have to always come back to affirm what it is that you're already doing, putting yourself around voices of people who are not going to pull punches, who are not going to sugarcoat what it is that they need to say to you and say it to you directly, getting better counsel around you, moving into that space and moving into a place where when you find yourself hitting a wall with your spiritual work and things like that, go back to the basics. And that's why a lot of the work that I do, I even the shows I do, if you really, really listen, everything I'm talking about is pretty basic. And why? Because I've been in this community long enough to understand that those who you guys hail as being the great grand poobahs of magic and occult wizardry, they don't even have the basics down pat. That's why when you ask them certain questions, they give you dumb answers or they tell you to get out their face. You should ask things like that. Because they don't even know themselves. They skipped step 2 of association. The associative step 2 phase is where you say, okay, now I can associate these concepts that I'm learning with something that is real and alive in my life. That's when you integrate it into your life. So by the time you get to step 3 and everything is automatic, it becomes a very fluid procedure, whatever it is that you're working on. You have a fluidity. But a lot of them don't have the fluidity because they went from step 1, they got a little bit of information, got overexcited, and then said, okay, now I can do this naturally. And that's why they have a driver's license, but they can't drive. And they're crashing into everything. All right. That has been Thunderground Thursdays. Thank you for listening. My name is Chief Yuya, and I'll see you tomorrow for Foundational Friday. And then, of course, again, Chief speaks on Sunday, and we'll be having our herb webinar as well this Sunday. Make sure you sign up if you haven't already. All right. Until such time, one love, one strength, one movement, one vision, one aim, one objection. Hotepu.
If you are interested in learning how herbs can be used for healing and magic, then join us on September 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern for a power-packed ANU Nation webinar. The Spiritual Gifts of Herbs live webinar will be hosted by Kim, who is the host of ANU Asafo and a member of the Sadulu House Spiritual Center. Some of the topics will cover how to use herbs for specific uses and spiritual practices, discerning which herbs are best for men and women, and why certain herbs are associated with male and female deities. Those who RSVP early and attend the event will receive 25% off ANU Nation products and services. Simply go to anunation.org/events and register before September 13th. Learn how to choose herbs to create effective rituals by attending the Spiritual Gifts of Herbs webinar. See you there.